Russia is a land of extremes, spanning 2 continents and 11 time zones. From icy Arctic coasts to warm Black Sea beaches, its landscapes are as varied as its people. Its story is immense, dramatic, and often surprising. Join us as we journey through Russia's dramatic history. Long before Russia became a nation, its lands were home to ancient tribes. Slavs lived in the forests and plains, hunting, farming, and trading. They built wooden villages along rivers like the Dnieper and Volga. These rivers were highways, linking distant lands and peoples. In the north, Viking traders sailed down the rivers. They were called Varangians by the locals. These Norsemen came seeking furs, honey, and silver. Some settled, mixing with Slavs and founding new towns. The most famous of these Viking leaders was Rurik, who began to rule in Novgorod around 862. Trade was the lifeblood of early Russia. Towns grew where rivers met. Merchants brought goods from Byzantium in the south and from Scandinavia in the north. The land was a crossroads for many cultures and languages. By the 9th century, these tribes and traders began to unite. They formed small principalities, each ruled by a prince. The stage was set for the birth of the first Russian state. Around 882, a Varangian prince named Oleg took control of Kiev. This marked the birth of Kievan Rus, the first great state on Russian soil. Kiev became a center of power and trade, linking north and south. Its rulers collected tribute from surrounding towns and tribes. The most important moment came in 988. Prince Vladimir of Kiev chose Eastern Orthodox Christianity as the state religion. He ordered the people to be baptized in the Dnieper River. This decision connected Russia to the rich culture of Byzantium and shaped its faith for centuries. Kievan Rus grew wealthy and powerful. Its princes built stone churches and invited scholars, artists, and priests from Byzantium. Law codes were written and trade flourished. The state stretched from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. But Kievan Rus was never fully united. Local princes often fought for power. As time passed, the state began to weaken and new threats appeared on the horizon. In 1237, a new terror swept across Russia: the Mongol armies. Led by Batu Khan, the Mongols burned towns and crushed armies. Kiev was destroyed in 1240, its churches and palaces in ruins. This began what Russians call the Mongol yoke. For more than a century, Russian lands paid tribute to the Mongol Khans. Local princes kept their thrones, but they served Mongol overlords. The Mongols did not settle or build, but their rule was harsh and demanding. Taxes were high, and rebellions were punished with fire and sword. Yet the Mongol era changed Russia in unexpected ways. Princes learned to rule with a firm hand, collecting taxes and building armies. They also borrowed Mongol ideas about government and military tactics. The Mongols isolated Russia from the West, but they also helped unify the land under strong leaders. By the late 1300s, the Mongols' power began to fade. New cities and princes were ready to challenge their rule. One city, Moscow, was about to rise from the ashes. Moscow was once just a small wooden town on a river, but by the 14th century it had become a stronghold. The princes of Moscow were clever and ambitious. They collected taxes for the Mongols, gaining favors and wealth. Slowly, they united nearby towns under their rule. The turning point came in 1380. Prince Dmitry Donskoy led Russian forces against the Mongols at the Battle of Kulikovo. It was a hard-fought victory and a symbol of hope, though the Mongols still returned for a time. Over the next century, Moscow's power grew. The city became the center of Russian Orthodoxy, as the church moved there from Kiev. In 1480, Ivan III, called Ivan the Great, finally broke free from Mongol control. He stopped paying tribute and declared Moscow the Third Rome, a new center of Christian power after Rome and Byzantium. Ivan rebuilt the Kremlin, making Moscow a city of stone towers and golden domes. Moscow's princes became tsars, claiming to rule all of Russia. They began a new era of expansion and centralization, determined to unite the vast land under one crown. Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, ruled from 1547. He was the first to be crowned Tsar of all Russia. Ivan expanded the empire eastward, conquering Kazan and Siberia. He built St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, a symbol of victory and faith. But Ivan was also a harsh ruler. He created a secret police and punished nobles who challenged him. His reign was marked by terror, war, and the massacre of entire towns. After his death, Russia fell into chaos. This was the time of troubles, years of famine, invasion, and civil war. Foreign armies entered Russia, and rival princes fought for the throne. The people suffered greatly, but in 1613, a new dynasty was chosen, the Romanovs. Their first Tsar, Michael Romanov, brought peace and started to rebuild the nation. The Romanovs would rule Russia for more than 300 years. They turned it into a vast empire, stretching from Poland to the Pacific. But the seeds of future conflict were already planted. Peter the Great ruled from 1682 and wanted to make Russia a modern European power. He traveled west, learned shipbuilding, and brought back new ideas. Peter built a new capital, St. Petersburg, on the Baltic Sea. He forced nobles to wear Western clothes and cut their beards. Factories, schools, and a modern army were created. Catherine the Great continued Peter's work. She expanded the empire south and west, taking Crimea and lands in Poland. Catherine encouraged art, science, and new laws. But while the palace glittered, most Russians remained poor peasants, tied to the land as serfs. The Romanovs built a powerful, centralized state. They introduced reforms, but also ruled with an iron fist. Russia became a force in European politics, fighting wars with Sweden, Turkey, and France. Yet, beneath the grandeur, tensions simmered. The gap between rich and poor grew wider. New ideas about freedom and rights began to spread, setting the stage for upheaval. The 19th century, was really a time of, change and trouble for Russia. In 1812, Napoleon invaded with a huge army. Russians actually burned their own cities and retreated. The harsh winter and fierce resistance ended up destroying Napoleon's forces. Russia did emerge victorious, but it came at a great cost. The Tsars tried to reform things, but honestly, change came pretty slowly. In 1861, Alexander II freed the serfs, hoping to modernize the countryside. Factories, railroads, and new cities started to appear, but most people still lived in poverty. The gap between rulers and common folk just stayed wide. Ideas of revolution began to spread. Writers, students, and workers started questioning the Tsar's power. In 1905, a revolution shook the empire. The Tsar allowed some limited reforms, but unrest continued. The government grew more repressive, and the people, more desperate. By the early 20th century, Russia was really a powder keg. War, hunger, and anger set the stage for the biggest revolution in Russian history. World War I was a disaster for Russia. Millions died, and the Tsar lost support. In 1917, revolution swept Petrograd. The Tsar abdicated, ending centuries of monarchy. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, took power, promising peace, land, and bread. After civil war, they created the USSR in 1922, changing Russia forever. After World War II, Russia led the Soviet Union in a global rivalry with the USA. This was the Cold War, a dangerous game of spies, rockets, and politics. The USSR sent the first human to space and built nuclear weapons. But honestly, life was often hard. People faced shortages and strict controls. In the 1980s, leader Mikhail Gorbachev tried to reform the system. He introduced glasnost, which means openness, and perestroika, or restructuring. But the changes, spun out of control. By 1991, the USSR collapsed. Russia became an independent country again, with Boris Yeltsin as its first president. The 1990s were chaotic. Factories closed, crime rose, and many people became poor. In 2000, Vladimir Putin was elected president. He promised stability and strength. Under Putin, Russia became wealthier and more powerful, but also more controlled. Opposition voices were silenced, and the government grew more central. Today, Russia is once again a major player in world affairs. Its past still shapes its actions and ambitions. Russia's history is honestly a story of survival and transformation. From ancient tribes to mighty czars, from Soviet leaders to modern presidents, each era has really left its mark. The country has faced invasions, revolutions, and wars, but always finds a way to endure. The legacy of strong rulers and central power still shapes Russian politics. Old fears and hopes linger, influencing decisions today. Russia's geography, diversity, and dramatic past make it unique, both in Europe and Asia. Understanding Russia's journey helps us see why it acts the way it does. The lessons of history echo in today's headlines, from debates over freedom to struggles for influence abroad. Russia's story isn't finished. Its future will be shaped by its past. As the world watches, Russia stands at another crossroads. Its thousand-year drama reminds us that history is never simple, and that change can come when we least expect it.